So we're not going to just talk about our recreational ponds that like I would have at home where I feed fish and catch fish for our own use, but there's an opportunity that you can use ponds on our farms for economic production.
Correct.
So let's talk about that.
Okay, so there's three kinds of aquaculture in Missouri and actually all across the United States. Raceway, which is predominantly in Missouri, used for trout production.
Trout.
With spring, usually a spring is a source of the water. They're usually discharging that water into a local stream.
And this is what we'd see at the fish hatcheries.
The fish hatcheries. The Missouri Department of Conservation runs a number of fish hatcheries for recreational use primarily.
Right.
And then there are farm ponds, and farm ponds have been used for fish production in Missouri for a long time. When I was a student, farmers were growing fish for food sales. That has changed because of the markets predominantly. Most fish farms that use ponds for food fish are located in the most of southern extreme regions of Missouri, like in the Boot Heel. The primary problem is the competition, price competition. Catfish production in the four states in the South, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, their cost of production is less than $1 a pound. So we lack the degree days to compete with those kind of prices, except the Boot Heel. The Boot Heel, they might be able to make a profit at that price. Most of the other ponds in Missouri that are being used to grow fish are mainly targeted at higher value niche markets. Stockers, bait fish, large fish for put and take, recreational fisheries, are high value products like goldfish, or scientific supply fish, these kinds of things. The Missouri farmers have figured out a way to make money without having to compete with the low dollar figure of commodity fish coming from the South.
And these fish, like stockers that we see, fish sales this time of year in the spring,
right,
coming from those farmers.
And those stockers can go into aquaculture systems, or many of them are going to recreational ponds, people wanting to stock their own pond for recreational fishing. About half of the fish in Missouri are ponds, a quarter are raceways, and the other quarter are aquaculture systems, indoor aquaculture systems.
All right. So what kind of profits are in these farm-type ponds? Is there probably
It depends entirely on the market. That's why so many of them have shifted away from food fish. It's going to be difficult to compete with food fish prices out of Missouri ponds. First of all, the major limitation that we have in Missouri is we don't have the degree days of the southern farmers. And so that means they're getting their fish to market size in a year. We're going to take 2 years. And so that already puts you at a disadvantage. And their prices their costs are so cheap compared to our costs that's why most Missouri farmers, particularly in the middle of Missouri or even in the Ozark region, they're selling to a niche market. They're selling to a higher value. But that higher value market is out there. Bait fish is a big commodity in Missouri.
What would the bait fish be then?
Bait fish are minnows.
Oh, just raising minnows.
Fathead minnows. Yeah, they wind up in your local store bait shop. Bait shop. And so that's profitable. That's a high price per pound. That's 10 times more costly than buying food. People will pay a lot more money for recreation than they pay for food.
Oh, sure.
So now there are, for example, we visited a number of these people that are raising fish in ponds. One of the most interesting one to me was the one down in Ava. They're raising goldfish. and they're actually selling these goldfish on Amazon, and that's way much more profitable than selling food fish.
Now, when I think of goldfish, I think of the 39-cent goldfish I had as a kid.
Well, even a 39-cent goldfish is way more expensive than the price per pound at your grocery store. So,
gotcha, because 39 cents for an ounce.
You're not going to get that goldfish for 39 cents anymore. You're probably going to pay $2 or $3 for them, which makes them, like probably $50 a pound.
Oh wow! so therefore on Amazon, where you would just ship a bag of a dozen
goldfish.
Wow!
You click on Amazon, put goldfish, they come up. They have pictures loaded of bags of different colored goldfish. You click on it, and it'll probably be $100 or more for a bag of goldfish.
Well, how about koi? The different colors.
These actually are they are selling koi carp.
Okay.
They're not selling the really high dollar ones. The Asians will pay thousands of dollars for particular patterns. These are mainly colorful fish that people desire for their aquariums or outdoor ponds.
Okay. So what about like crayfish? Is that a
crayfish is a market, and it's a low yield market.
Really?
Yeah. The same thing with freshwater prawns. Freshwater prawns and crayfish can be grown in ponds, but typically they're less than 500 pounds per acre yield. So they're relatively low yield. Most of them are sold live to consumers that show up at the farm.
Mm-hmm. It's a one-time deal too.
Right. And so, but the productivity, for example, when we built our shrimp farm at Bradford, our intensive shrimp farm at Bradford, we're talking about productivities of 20 to 40,000 pounds per acre. So orders of magnitude greater than these systems. So yeah, you can do that, but it's a low input, low yield type of production.
Okay, but low overhead also.
Low overhead.
Low overhead. So this would be just what you. But now, if you want to do any of these, you might have to start with a new pond, wouldn't you?
Mostly these are ponds dedicated for this purpose.
Right, because if you have a few catfish left over in your pond or bass,
they're going to eat them all.
Yeah, you're not going to have anything.
You wind up feeding the catfish.
Right.
No, it needs to be a purposefully built pond, stocked only with these animals. These animals aren't going to compete well with fish.
Okay. Now, like in our Ozarks where we have spring fed,
right?
Is that an advantage that they could have different types of fish, or
that water will be too cold?
Okay.
These crayfish, if you want production of freshwater shrimp or crayfish, the water needs to be warmer.
So even a goldfish, we couldn't use spring fed.
Goldfish, it's not such a big deal, because with goldfish, you're not trying to produce a mass. You're not converting feed. See, most of aquaculture for food, basically, it's a conversion machine to convert high-protein feed into fish flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're producing a scientific supply fish or a goldfish, that food is not the big item on their expenses. They don't have to buy a lot of food because they're not turning a lot of food into fish.
Mm-hmm.
They're not producing a lot of fish mass. They're producing individuals, which are selling at a very high dollar.
Sure.
And so cold water, slow growth is not such a big deal with
even with minnows. Yeah.
Or minnows.
Yes.
Again, that's a high dollar. You're selling small fish, by a dozen or a bucket. So you're not selling a big truck full of fish. That's a completely different cost structure and market.
So can landowners get on your extension website to get information about how they may get into this?
Right.
Pond raised specialty fish. 3
years ago, we created the University of Missouri Extension website, and it's divided into two parts: the pond management and fisheries, and the aquaculture. And in the aquaculture, I have a whole bunch of PDFs, videos, and information to basically reveal the economics of aquaculture, the challenges, what's going on in Missouri, and so forth.
A fish farmer once told me you have to kill 1 million fish before you can call yourself a fish farmer.
Well,
is that true?
The situation with aquaculture, what most farmers in Missouri, first of all, most modern farmers are very much aware of changing technology and modern technology. They have to be to stay into business. And the farmers who raise chickens and hogs in indoor facilities probably are most closely understand what's necessary to raise fish. What's different, though, is water quality. They're dealing predominantly with air quality. So they know how to manage air quality in a swine facility or a poultry facility. But water quality, they're not familiar with. And so a lot of the presentations on our website deal with water quality, how to measure it, what's important. That's the thing that they don't know. And so for many of the farmers who jump into aquaculture, get their feet wet, literally, they go through a learning curve. And that learning curve usually involves killing fish. Because when you build a system to grow fish, the objective is to produce as much fish per square foot as fast as possible to keep the cost down. But then that puts stress on the system. That means that the fish are going to be putting ammonia in the water, using oxygen, and you're always running up against that barrier of too much ammonia, too little oxygen. And most farmers that haven't done this before, the fish design a system for them. If they try to run too many fish, what happens is the fish say, hey, I'm dying, okay? And they die back off to the carrying capacity of the system. And after several cycles like this, the farmer learns what the carrying capacity of his system are. He learns how to improve his system to increase the carrying capacity. So there is a learning curve that these farmers go through. They usually isolate through catastrophic failure and then coming back.
But you all can help ward off some of those.
Yeah, we can help them because we've had enough experience that we've already killed way more fish than they've ever imagined killing.
Well, speaking of which, how about cages? Can that be successful?
There's a number of ways to do fish culture in ponds. For a while, I was involved with a company that was selling or leasing floating raceways. The in-pond raceway is another technique. And in fact, at the time that we were developing our partitioned aquaculture system at Clemson to intensify fish production, the guys over in Alabama were working on an in-pond raceway. So this is similar to what we did. We poured concrete raceways in an existing pond and corralled the fish from the pond into a raceway. We turned pond fish culture into raceway culture, with 90% of the pond being algal growth for waste treatment. What they did in Alabama is they built a raceway on the ground and then drug it into the pond and set it into the pond. And then they had propellers or aerators move water from the pond at large through the raceway. So that's another way to do it. When you get done looking at the economics, that's an expensive system. That's a more expensive system. And so it has not caught on because it's about twice as expensive as converting existing ponds into more intensive systems.
So it looks like you can go as intensive as you'd like, but if you really want to get into the high yield, you've got to get intense.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about now, some more intensive management. What can we do with that?
Aquaculture has progressively gotten more intensive over the years. Even southern fish culture, when they were 3,000, now they're probably 10,000 or greater. And there's several issues there. First of all, again, the primary issue which brought me to the table on this was the water discharge. So you can't discharge water, so you've got to reuse it, either in an indoor system or an outdoor system. It has to be treated for reuse. And so if you're going to reuse water, then you want to reuse it to the maximum advantage. So increasing production gives you the maximum possible income for that amount of treatment that you're using. So that has driven the intensification. And then if you go to these expensive indoor systems, they're very expensive. And so, I mean, the ceiling is the limit. So we're pushing production upwards of 40 or 50,000 pounds per acre equivalent of water. again, to try to pay for all this infrastructure. And so that's the driving force are costs and water. Try to get the most input per unit of money that you put out there on the floor or in that pond.
Now, on these intensive systems, we're growing crops like shrimp,
Right.
like saltwater shrimp.
Right.
And, well, what can we get for that compared to what we can buy at a local store?
So this is one of the big issues with aquaculture in the United States. The cost of production is the huge elephant in the room here. So globally, since I started my career in aquaculture now contributes 50% of global fish. 50%. When I started, it was less than 5%.
Oh, wow.
So within my lifetime, it's gone from less than 5% to 50% globally.
So 50% of our fish globally. Are raised
by aquaculture.
In captivity, then.
In some form of, that includes net pens, ocean net pens too.
Okay.
But now in the United States, only 7% of fish consumed in the United States comes from aquaculture. Why? And the reason has been aquaculture expansion in the United States has been limited by the cost of production of seafood, fish and seafood coming from outside the United States. China, Thailand, for example, shrimp. Take shrimp as an example. We get most of our shrimp in the United States comes from China, Thailand, India, and Indonesia.
Okay.
And the reason is their cost of production, their income is probably less than $2 a pound. And then they come into a store like Walmart, for example, and they're turned into tails, and they're selling frozen tails for something like $5 a pound. Our cost of production in an intensive system here is on the order of $9 a pound whole, which means $18 a pound tails. So our cost of production is much higher than the international cost of production.
Why is that?
The international cost, particularly the Asian cost of production, is tied to what economists refer to as external cost. The external cost for Asian shrimp production is high. External cost means discharge of water to the environment, low labor costs, and use of chemicals, pesticides, which are banned in the United States. So most of the practices that are used internationally to produce shrimp, we can't do them. We don't have low labor costs. We can't discharge water. We can't use banned pesticides in our production.
So pesticides that are banned in the United States are used.
Pesticides that we're not allowed to use in aquaculture systems that they do use. They typically are using them to control algae blooms. Mm. We don't. We can't. Mm-hmm. They use things like malachite green. That's a banned compound for us.
Okay. Where in your system you're using tilapia and other ways to
That's right.
to control your algae.
That's right. Or in intensive systems, we're using sedimentation or screens or sand beds to remove solids.
Okay.
That's at the high end, indoor controlled climate systems.
So what if a grower wanted to look into this? Again, you got your website, and you once told me an anecdote about saltwater shrimp. You said go down to the Gulf,
right,
buy some, bring it up a truck. Right. If you can sell out today, you have the markets.
Rent a truck, fill it with ice, go down to Louisiana and buy shrimp that are coming in off the docks from the fishermen, and then see if you can sell them. I still tell that to farmers. Basically, the message is, and the message is in our extension website. Before you start building an aquaculture system, figure out where you're going to sell the animals. I mean, most farmers today if they're a row crop farmer, all they got to do is grow corn and soybeans successfully, and then they put it in a truck and take it to the town and sell them, right, at the elevator, the local elevator. That's not true of seafood. We don't have an existing market for seafood. If you build an indoor, expensive, intensive aquaculture system, your cost of production is going to be close to retail prices. So if you sell your product to a middleman, which is what most farmers will want to do, they're going to make all the money. You'll barely break even, and they'll make all the money. So the first thing I tell these farmers is make sure you've got someplace that you can sell this product and make a profit. And part of the reason for the website is to show them what the cost. I can tell you what the cost of production. I'm doing it. I can tell you what the cost of production is. For fish in an indoor intensive system, it's going to be, depending on the species, $3 to $5 a pound. So whole, that's $10 a pound dress out.
Mm-hmm.
That's close to what they're selling for in a grocery store. So the middleman, he's going to want to give you $4 or less. So you're going to be losing $1 a pound.
So you got to market yours for a reason, because it's fresh.
It's there, and there's a significant percentage of consumers that will pay a high price for locally grown, environmentally responsible, clean seafood, not contaminated with heavy metals or pesticides coming in internationally. We don't know what that product is. There is a significant percentage of consumers that will pay for that. For example, there's a shrimp grower down in Forestell, Missouri, that's raising shrimp in this system similar to what I did at Bradford, this Biofloc system, and they're selling shrimp at around $18 a pound, heads on, in a bag. That's 10 times higher than what shrimp are coming from Asia.
Right.
But he's got a waiting list of people. Everything he grows, he sells, and people drive to his farm to get them.
But this is something that you can just only sell a few times a year.
Well, he sells them continuously.
Does he? Okay.
He's
so
year-round production, but, he's selling a few tens of thousands of pounds. He's not selling 1 million pounds.
Mm.
So that's the difference. We're still talking about niche markets, low-volume niche markets, as opposed to commodity markets.
Right.
So
you're guaranteed to sell.
Right.
It's not going to expire, because if you can't sell them fresh, all of a sudden you got to do something with them.
Right. That's right. So yeah, the seafood that comes from Asia is all frozen, processed and frozen, to get the weight down as much as possible.
Get the heads off and
Right.
get the.
And then I'm going to waste time and money dragging heads over here to process. So they're a process. In fact, a significant amount of U.S. wild-caught seafood is sent to Asia for processing and then returns as product.
Oh, wow.
Because it's cheaper to process there than it is here.
But 93% of our seafood is still wild caught in the United States.
Not the aquaculture portion, but again, the aquaculture portion is only 7%
of homegrown
of U.S. seafood and fisheries. 7% of that is aquaculture.
Okay,
U.S.
okay,
aquaculture.
Gotcha. Okay, but we consume a lot of aquaculture grown from other countries,
right?
Shrimp and
most
fish.
Imported shrimp. It's almost it's overwhelmingly farm raised in Asia.
And also some of our catfish is also, isn't it?
Vietnamese catfish comes in and competes with U.S. catfish. U.S. produced catfish from the southern U.S. states can't compete price wise against the Vietnamese catfish. It's cheaper.
To ship it all the way from Vietnam to here.
All the way. Shipping adds maybe 10%.
Oh, wow.
So shipping at current fuel prices is not a deterrent.
Okay. All right. So if farmers want to get in, they really need to start off with your website to get a lot of information.
Go to the website. Look at the economics. Understand the economics first. First and foremost, I tell them, look at the economics. The cost of production in intensive systems is close to retail price. That's the first thing. You got to honestly look at that before you jump into this. And a lot of farmers don't want to deal with selling directly to consumers.
Right.
And if you don't want to do that, you need to think long and hard about this.
Yes.
So the largemouth bass producer that's been growing bass now for 6 years in Higginsville, he's been a very persistent and talented individual. He's a row crop farmer and hogs, and he got into raising largemouth bass, and he'll tell you that he's learned a lot of hard lessons the hard way. He's selling to a middleman, and he told me that he thinks this year he's going to make money.
He thinks.
And that middleman is selling almost exclusively to Asian live markets in St. Louis and Kansas City.
Okay.
And they get a high dollar for their product, so he's able to give the fish farmer a little bit higher price. And I don't know why. I've heard stories about why Asians want to see their fish live, but they go in and they point to the fish, and they pull that fish out and dress it, or put them in a tank and they take it home.
And tilapia is the same way.
Same way.
Yeah, they want a live.
There's a demand among the Asian markets for live seafood.
Right. Well, Dave, this has been fantastic. I've learned a lot, and you've really got the points across about the economics of it,
right?
But also how to manage your ponds or even your raceways. There's a lot of management to this. This is not something just to jump into, but there's a lot of help to get started. And of course, you're available too, and maybe
anytime.
Hopefully, we'll have some hands-on, some live videos or some videos of operations that they can get a better picture of this.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Dave.
Appreciate it.
This is it for Tim's Take and our great discussion on aquaculture. Bye.